If you dare to say who you most truly are, if you dare to write what you most deeply feel, what your experience actually was, you will never find yourself alone in that place.
Welcome to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl.
Cheryl Strayed is a writer, podcast host, playwright, and the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller Wild, From Lost to Found on the Pacific Crest Trail, which was adapted into an Oscar-nominated film. Her work has appeared in the Best American Essays, the New York Times, and Vogue, among others.
I think that writing has been the single most healing act of my life. And it is because writing demands that we tell the truth about what it means to be human, that we tell the story of not who we are, but who we are really, really in our most primal, private self. This is why we come to art. And I think writing can do that in a particular way that is maybe better than any other art form, because what you're allowed into when you read a book or a poem or an essay is you're really allowed into the consciousness of the narrator, the writer. And so when the writer is talking about their own life, you get to see that. You get to, you go behind that facade. And what's really fascinating to me about the healing power of writing is, and I know this because I teach writing, so I've talked to so many, thousands of students at this point who, they express this fear of the very thing that the writing is most powerful at doing, which is telling the truth. Because as you know, Thomas, truth telling, as healing as it is, it's also associated with shame and fear. We're told, many of us were sort of seeped in this from like the very beginning. If you tell us who you really are, we will reject you. We will judge you. We will cast you out. And that is talk about a primal fear. One of our most essential aspects is wanting to be loved and included and affirmed. And so what if we dare to do this thing that we've both been explicitly and implicitly told not to do, which is to tell the truth. And, writing demands that. And what I have found over and over again is that if you dare to say who you most truly are, if you dare to write what you most deeply feel, what your experience actually was, you will never find yourself alone in that place. That story that you are bold enough to tell, the truest story, will be the thing that actually, your fear will not only not come true, people will gather around you. I had no idea that I wasn't alone in my grief. And now people all over the world have shared with me their grief stories. This also has happened, me writing about, I had an abusive father. I, experienced lots of childhood trauma at the hands of my father and grandfather in different ways. And there again, every time I tell those stories that are taboo or to be silenced or erased or hidden or kept private, what happens is people gather around me, and not to console me, but to share with me their own stories, to say, me too, which is the most profound consolation there is. I mean, because as you know well, the other side of collective trauma is collective healing. It's gathering, it's holding hands and, forming the circle and looking at each other and saying, that was hard, but we have the strength and courage to endure this and to go beyond this.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think you said something I just want to underline that is very powerful, is like when we share those experiences or moments. And I think in a collectively traumatized world, because we all were hurt, like born into a world that was already hurt to a certain degree. So emotions became personal properties versus shared spaces.
Right.
When somebody is grieving and I feel your grief or you feel my grief, we actually share a space where grief happens. when that shared space is healing, and the separation between people feeling separate from each other is actually part of the trauma. So whenever we create shared spaces, and I think your books create shared spaces because they are real, because they're vulnerable, they're authentic, they're real. And I'm curious, what was the effect that this, like, people sharing with you on you, first of all, and then we can also see how it helps them. But what was, because you put something into the public space that has been witnessed by so many people and you got so much response, what would you say is the experience on you from everything like that
Yeah.
came back, you know?
Well, personally, there's so many gifts I've received because of that experience. And it didn't all just come from my book Wild. Obviously, that was my big, international bestseller, but before that, like even some of the first work I was publishing in my 20s, one of the first essays I published was called Heroine. Another one was called The Love of My Life. And both of these essays are about my grief and, drug use and traumas, and even way back then, I started to see, that first of all, the act of writing is very healing because it is that truth-telling process where you kind of have to relive the trauma, but also, find the truth and beauty in it in order to write a story that isn't just about you, but is about the universal human experience. But then the next layer is the healing aspect of people coming to you and saying, like I said, I thought I was the only one, or me too, or, and I think that for me, that was a really unexpected aspect of the healing process because, writing, the act of writing is so private. The act of publishing is absolutely public. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget the very first essay. I mentioned this essay, Heroine, that I published. It was my very first nonfiction piece. It was published, oh gosh, I want to say I was, 28 or something. And I just distinctly remember what I wanted to do when I received the magazine in the mail that the essay was in. I wanted to go buy every copy of that magazine so
Right.
nobody would read it for those reasons of those ancient triggers of shame and what kind of person says this stuff about herself and what kind of person shares this in the public space. And the lesson was there is healing in the public space, in that kind of courage. And it was because, people said you're not alone, essentially. And there is something I feel that there must be something kind of that, I believe really deeply in the kind of wisdom of the body. One of the pieces of advice I give a lot in my work as Dear Sugar, as an advice columnist, is like trust yourself. And by that, I mean, really, what does it feel like right here? Right here in your chest. What does it feel like in your gut? Trust that. And for me to kind of receive that wisdom that like I'm actually not alone in this experience of despair or loss or sorrow or grief. It felt like a medicine. That's all I can say. It felt like medicine to my actual soul and body.
The full conversation between Thomas and Cheryl Strayed will air as part of our upcoming Collective Trauma Summit this October. Details about this 7-day online event will be announced soon. If you want to be notified, sign up at the link in this episode's show notes.
Thanks for listening to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl. Stay connected and get updates about new episodes by visiting our website, pointofrelationpodcast.com, and by subscribing to the Thomas Hübl YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.